The
This
farmer's
fine
shout
steer
tore
is
through the
strong and
open-air
healthy,
market like a
perfect for your
blade.
needs.
See it
Buy
walk
a
a bit
cow,
more.
get a working
What's your
Apache woman
price?
for free, he bellowed, slapping the animal's flank as if sealing a joke. Rough laughter answered him, sharp and careless, bouncing off wooden stalls and dust-choked air. At his side stood the woman, hands bound with a rope rubbed smooth by long use. Her head was lowered, dark hair pulled back tight. Her dress faded by sun and labor, yet even in stillness, there was something unbroken in the way she stood, spine straight, feet planted like roots in stubborn ground. The farmer paraded her misery as a selling point. He bragged about her strength, her silence, how she worked from dawn to dark, without complaint. Men circled closer, some with smirks, others with eyes that slid away in quiet shame. No one spoke. No one challenged him. The market had learned to survive by pretending not to see. The woman listened without reacting. Inside, her thoughts moved carefully, like steps across thin ice. She had learned that protest brought punishment, and hope, when shown too openly, could be crushed just as easily. Still, her jaw tightened when the farmer tugged the rope to force her to look up, proving his ownership to the crowd. At the edge of the gathering stood a lone cowboy, dust on his boots, miles in his posture. He had come to trade supplies, nothing more, but the farmer's words hit him harder than gunfire ever had. He watched the woman's eyes, steady, dark, furious beneath restraint, and something old stirred in his chest. He remembered other markets, other injustices, and the weight of regret that followed silence. When the farmer laughed again, louder this time, the cowboy stepped forward. The sound of his boots on hard ground cut through the murmurs. "That's not an offer," he said evenly. "That's an insult." The farmer scoffed, surprised anyone dared answer him. "You want the cow, you take the woman with it." The cowboy reached into his coat and placed coins on the table. One by one, each clinked sharp in the sudden quiet. "I'm not buying livestock," he said. "I'm buying her freedom." For a moment, greed and fear wrestled across the farmer's face. Then greed won. With a curse, he cut the rope and shoved the woman forward. She stumbled, then steadied herself. Slowly, she lifted her gaze to the cowboy. Suspicion warred with disbelief, but beneath it flickered something dangerous and rare. The road stretched endlessly before them, a ribbon of dust and rocks under the harsh midday sun. Niyah walked a few steps behind Elias, her hands brushing against the coarse fabric of her skirt as if it could remind her she was still herself, still free. Every muscle in her body was tense, trained to obey, to anticipate commands, to hide her thoughts. Freedom felt strange, almost unreal, like stepping into a dream she wasn't sure she deserved. Elias didn't rush her. He walked with steady, calm steps, giving her the space she seemed to need, letting silence speak where words could falter. She kept glancing at him, careful, measuring. Something in his quiet confidence told her that he was different, that he didn't see her as property or prize. The sun beat down, casting long shadows across the ground, and every step forward seemed to pull her further from the life she had known. Yet every step also brought a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years, possibility. When night fell, they made camp beside a small, shallow creek. Elias built a fire, the flames crackling and throwing dancing light across their faces. He offered her water first, a simple act that spoke more than any words could. Niyah accepted it, gripping the cup tightly, feeling the cool relief slide down her throat. She wanted to speak, but the words stuck, tangled with disbelief and exhaustion. Finally, she spoke in fragments, pieces of a life too long suppressed. She told him her name, Niyah, and bits of her story, how she had worked fields and kitchens and barns, how promises of freedom had been broken again and again, until hope felt like a dangerous luxury. Elias listened without interrupting, his face calm, his eyes never leaving hers. By morning, distant hoofbeats carried warnings on the wind. The farmer and two of his men had come riding fast, claiming theft, shouting that she belonged to them. Elias stood his ground, body poised but unthreatening, his rifle resting against his shoulder. "She's not yours," he said evenly. "You sold what you never owned." The confrontation drew the attention of nearby traders, who had heard the farmer's earlier shouts. They slowed, watching, murmuring to each other. The farmer cursed and threatened, but the growing number of witnesses left him no choice. With a final glare, he turned his horse, spitting curses over his shoulder as he disappeared down the trail. Niyah exhaled slowly, relief washing over her in waves. For the first time in years, she understood what it meant to be unclaimed. She looked at Elias, words of gratitude forming silently on her lips, and realized she could begin thinking of herself, not as someone else's property, but as someone who finally belonged to herself. The morning sun painted the horizon in soft shades of gold as Elias and Niyah approached the edge of the settlement near her people's old lands. The trees were sparse, the ground dry, but there was a sense of permanence here that the open road could never offer. Niyah slowed her steps, taking in every detail, the shape of the hills, the scent of wild sage, the distant hum of a creek she remembered from childhood. Freedom was no longer an abstract word whispered in secret. It was the soil beneath her boots, the air she could breathe without fear. Elias walked beside her, quiet, giving her the space to absorb it all. He didn't offer advice or warnings. He simply stayed close, a silent promise that she wasn't alone. Niyah felt a mixture of relief and uncertainty. The years of being treated as a possession had left scars, subtle but deep. Trust wasn't given lightly, but with every step, she realized that for the first time she didn't have to hide. When they reached the outskirts, she finally stopped. She turned to Elias, searching his face. "Why?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. "Why did you step in? You didn't know me. You could have walked away like everyone else." Elias met her gaze evenly. "My mother was sold once," he said quietly. "No one stepped in for her. I've carried that memory my whole life. If I can change even one story, make even one wrong right, I do it." His words were simple yet heavy with truth. Niyah felt the weight of his honesty, the absence of judgment or expectation, and for the first time, she allowed herself to feel gratitude without suspicion. She reached out briefly, grasping his hand, a touch neither of obligation nor familiarity, but of acknowledgement. Strength met strength, shared in the silence between words. Then she let go, stepping forward into her own path. Elias mounted his horse, tipping his hat with a nod, and rode away slowly, dust rising behind him. Niyah watched until he disappeared from sight, the realization settling in her chest like a slow, steady flame. The market, the farmer, the long years of fear and obedience, they were behind her. Ahead lay uncertainty, yes, but also choice. She could work her land, find her family, or simply stand under the sun and breathe without fear. For the first time, she understood what it meant to truly belong to herself. Her hands were empty yet full, holding nothing but the right to decide her own life. And somewhere deep inside, a small smile formed, fragile yet unyielding, as the wind carried the scent of sage and freedom across the open land, promising a future that was finally completely hers.